Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Garden Radio Show with your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
It's the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, your destination for all things gardening, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, videos, and a whole lot more to help you grow more of what you like to eat and want to eat.
Okay, so we want to welcome Teresa Byington. She is a master gardener, Rosarian from Brownsburg, Indiana. She's the co-host of Rose Chat Radio broadcast and brings a wealth of garden knowledge and garden inspiration to the Rose Chat family. She and her husband enjoy gardening over 200 roses. And for more information about the Rose Chat podcast, it's at rosechat.podbean.com. Welcome to the program, Teresa.
Hey guys, how are you doing up there? Is it warming up?
It's warming up very nicely. I think the cold is past, and I'm going to say that, and I'll cross my fingers, but I think we're going to go.
We're going with it too. We're getting some warm temperatures. We've had lots and lots of rain, but today we're in the garden.
Well, Teresa, for those who have never ever grown roses before, what is the number one thing that they need to know before they go to the official garden center of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, Bloom Ellis, and just grab a rose? What is the first thing they need to know?
Well, you need to think location, location, location. Do a bit of research. You want to choose a rose that's suited for your growing zone and the space or the container that you plan to use. Now, I go to California a lot, and I see a lot of beautiful roses out in California that are not suited to the Midwest. So you need to know, read the labels, know what rose is going to do well in your growing zone. And with most plants, picking the right rose for the right place is key.
Right, okay, that's great. Now, what preparation goes into planting a rose bush successfully? Full sun, shade, type of soil? How can one be successful in planting a rose bush?
Well, like most blooming plants, we know they love sun. And roses really love sun. They love 6 to 8 hours per day. They like a rich, loamy soil that's going to drain well. Roses like water. They like to be watered, but they don't want wet feet. Most plants don't. That's setting them up to just to rot in the ground. So well-drained soil is great. Adding organic matter, just like you would with any other plant that you're going to expect great things from, because we know that what happens under the ground is going to reflect very quickly what happens above the ground, especially after the first couple of years when those roots start growing. They need something yummy to grow in.
So you spoke about location and the type of rose, but also our listeners may not be aware of this. Roses just don't all have that same fragrance. I mean, you can choose whatever color you want, but also there's a lot of reviews online. Some are more potent, some have very little smell to those roses.
Knowing what you want your rose to do, there's roses that are going to give you a pop of color in the landscape, but probably won't be. They won't be the most fragrant of roses. There's roses with old garden roses. They're going to be very fragrant, but they're only going to bloom one time for you. Then they're going to make you a nice shrub, just like a lilac would. There are hybrid teas that, if you want to show roses in a rose show, a beautiful hybrid tea, and many of them are fragrant. So, reading the label, not all roses are fragrant. Some are going to give you a few blooms, a few perfect blooms. Some are going to give you just a cascade of blooms. So what you want your rose to do, if you want your rose to climb a fence, you need to look for a climbing rose. So the research that you're going to do prior to planting your rose is going to give you that information.
Now, with roses, and I'm assuming this is the same with a lot of flowers, there's a certain time period in which these things bloom. A bloom is only going to be a bloom for so many days, and then based on the variety in which you purchase, some of them may bloom throughout the season or only in a couple of weeks span. Am I right or wrong on that?
Well, there are one-time bloomers, just like lilacs and mock oranges and things like that. Primarily, that's the old garden roses. Those are the roses that date back before 1867, when La France, the first hybrid tea, came into being. Those roses are going to give you amazing fragrance and just a shock and awe of bloom. Huge shrubs that are just covered in bloom. I call them my spring fireworks. But those old garden roses, while they'll give you all the fragrance and exciting blooms, they're only going to be around for about 4 or 5 weeks. But then there's the shrub roses, and they're ever blooming. You're going to get I have some of the shrub roses in my garden right now, and they're going to bloom most of the summer. They're going to take a little break, but most bloom cycles are 4 to 6 weeks in between. So you have a big flush of color, and then they're going to take a break. You're going to trim off those dead heads and give them a little extra fertilizer, and another 4 to 6 weeks you're going to have blooms again. So in my climate, I'm going to get about, on a traditional rose, I'm going to get about 3, maybe 4 bloom cycles.
Now, we'll talk about deadheading in a moment, but you said the one-time bloom, that's once a year. I've read that there's some varieties that bloom once and that's it. Am I wrong on this, or did I misread that it's a one-time bloom, it's done, and the plant's...
Yes.
Okay. What would be what's the purpose of purchasing a rose that blooms one time ever and that's it?
Well, in my garden, I have a lot of historical roses, and they only bloom one time. But again, they are the fragrant roses, and they're the roses with a history. Some of them date back to the 1400s. There's legends about these roses, and that's the kind of thing that I invite into my garden. They're beautiful, they're fragrant, but they're also historical, and they're just rich with legend and history. And that just makes my gardening experience more well-rounded. So I love that. I invite lilacs into my garden. They only bloom for 4 or 5 weeks, but I still love lilacs. So the old garden roses are that way. You're only going to get that one big flush, but boy, when they bloom, they bloom.
And I want to clarify, that's one bloom a year. It's not once the entire lifespan of the plant. That's once a year.
No.
Okay.
No, it's just like a lilac. They're going to come back next spring and next spring and next spring. Some of them have been around for, generations and much more than that. So, yes, you're going to enjoy that rose for many, many years.
Now, some people have unopened or distorted blooms. What causes this typically, and what is a good remedy for it?
Well, in my neck of the woods, the things that we deal with that are going to give you that problem are aphids, which, they don't just attack roses, other things, and thrips. And my biggest problem, I don't have a lot of thrips, but with aphids, they're just going to suck the life out of that little bud. So it's just not going to develop. So with aphids, they're easy to get rid of. You can splash them with some water in the hose. You can squish them. That's kind of therapeutic sometimes. But mostly what I do for any of those type of insects, I'm going to use a solution of soapy water. And that's about 4 tablespoons of, I use Dr. Bronner's peppermint, actually. It smells great, into a gallon of water. And that's going to take care of them. I'm just not a big insecticide person, because where do you stop? An insecticide, it's going to just throw a blanket over all insects. And we want to invite the good insects into our gardens. And good insects like lacewings and ladybugs, they're going to munch on those aphids and those thrips for you.
Now, you obviously have quite a large garden with 200 roses. For people who are more maybe in an urban setting who would like to have that rose, who remember grandma or mom having a rose or roses and doesn't have the space available, can you grow roses in a container? And if so, what are some of the guidelines that one needs to follow?
Well, it's going to take, for an old garden rose, they typically get large. I have a lot of rugosas and old garden roses, and they typically get large. But you can grow them in a container, but you're going to need a container that's going to be 15-gallon or more. So it's going to be sort of a semi-permanent planting on a balcony or deck or wherever you want to. I have lots of big roses in containers, and they do very well, even though I have to bring them in the winter. But we have gotten very good at putting them on those handy little caddies with rollers. I'm telling you, that's changed our life. But when planting a rose in a container, the thing that you want to remember is you want room for those roots to grow for at least a couple or 3 years before you have to repot. And you want a real light potting medium. That's something that's going to have perlite and vermiculite and those kinds of things in it, so it's going to drain well. It's not going to be so heavy. You want to be able to get your nutrients through to those roots. So a good quality container soil is just, something very important. Don't use soil from your garden. That just would not work in a pot.
Okay. Now, when it comes to something like deadheading your roses, what's kind of the best way to do that?
I'm sure there's a wrong way and there's a right way. What's the right way so we don't make the mistake first?
Well, I really don't think you can make a mistake. If the bloom is dead, trim it off. I do more of just shaping my plants. I don't do a lot of specific I'm going to take off those deadheads because if they start making hips, and they're going to slow down their production of blooms for sure. But there really isn't a right way and a wrong way. You, for most of the shrub or the modern roses today, which are a lot of the ones that I have, you're really going to shape your plant, keep it healthy. Anything that's kind of crossing over one cane to the other, you want to trim those out, kind of open up the center a little bit just for air circulation, just for the overall health. Anything that's too dinky or doesn't look healthy, take that out. But for the most part, you're going to get those dead heads off and retain the shape and size of the plant that you want.
Well, we appreciate the information, Teresa, about roses. Now, for people who want to catch your podcast with Chris, where's the best place they can go? And you guys are rose, and more roses, anything and everything you want to know.
Yes, we talk about anyone wants to talk about roses, we're ready to go. It's rosechatpodcast.com.
Okay. Well, Teresa, we're very happy that you have joined us on the program, and thank you for taking time. And when we come back, it's your garden questions and our garden answers.
Thank you, Teresa.
Have a good day, guys.
If you're in the Milwaukee or surrounding areas, just tune your radio to 860 AM or FM 106.5. You can also find links on our Facebook pages, The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener and Home Canning. Our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, click on the radio tab at the top of the page, then click on the Listen Live button, and you'll have immediately access to our live program. Mobile devices work very well also. Go to your app store and download for free the TuneIn app or the Simple Radio app. Then search WNOV 860, save it to your favorites, and you can have access to our radio show live wherever you're at in the world. Our radio program will also have podcast replay under the radio tab several days following the live broadcast. You can find all of these links in the show notes below. Our show airs 9 to 10 a.m. Central Standard Time every Saturday, March through the end of October. And we want to thank our sponsors because without them, this would not be anywhere possible. You can find all of their links under the radio tab on our website at thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.